In a busy animal shelter, filled with the sounds of barking and the shuffle of paws on concrete floors, there was one quiet corner that held a dog unlike any other. His name was Charlie, though few knew it. Charlie was a medium-sized mixed breed with a coat that had once been bright and shiny but now appeared dull and matted from neglect. His large, expressive eyes, once full of life, were now clouded with sadness and fear. He lay curled up in his kennel, hardly moving as people passed by. The shelter itself was a bustling place where dogs barked for attention and cats purred for affection. Brightly colored walls and cheerful volunteers made it seem welcoming, but Charlie felt like he was in another world, one where no one could reach him. While other dogs jumped eagerly at their kennels, barking for a chance at adoption or simply to play, Charlie remained still. He would not eat the treats offered to him nor respond to the gentle voices calling his name. Instead, he often turned away, staring blankly at the wall or curling tighter into himself. Every day that passed felt like an eternity for him. The staff who cared for the animals were kind yet frustrated with Charlie's refusal to engage. They had tried everything. Special food that smelled delicious, toys that jingled enticingly, and even gentle coaxing. But nothing seemed to work. He was completely shut down. They understood that he had experienced something painful and traumatic before arriving at the shelter, something that left him feeling lost and alone. Scheduled for adoption on Friday, Charlie's future seemed bleak. The staff hoped someone would take an interest in him before it was too late. They shared stories with each other about how they wished they could help him break free from his invisible cage. Every time they walked past his kennel, their hearts sank a little deeper at the sight of his emptiness. Then came Monday, a day that would change everything. A woman entered the shelter with a bright smile and an open heart, looking to adopt another dog. As she walked through the aisles of kennels filled with playful pups wagging their tails or nudging their noses against the bars, her eyes fell upon Charlie's kennel. For just a fleeting moment, he lifted his gaze and looked directly at her. That brief connection, a mere second, was like a glimmer of hope shining through clouds of despair. The woman paused mid-step, her heart skipping a beat as she noticed the intense sadness in those deep brown eyes. It tugged at something inside her. She felt drawn to him despite his unresponsiveness. After asking the staff if she could sit with him for a while, they agreed she could spend time near his kennel until Friday. Every day that week became an opportunity for her to reach out in simple ways without overwhelming him. She would sit quietly just outside his kennel, reading aloud from her favorite book or softly humming tunes she loved. Her presence was calm and inviting. She didn't try to force interaction but instead allowed him to observe her from a distance. On Wednesday morning during one of her visits, something remarkable happened. Charlie shifted ever so slightly closer toward her side of the kennel. It wasn't much, a mere inch, but it felt monumental to both of them. The woman smiled softly as she noticed this subtle change in behavior. It meant he was beginning to heal in some small way. By Thursday evening, something unprecedented occurred. When she offered him bits of food from her hand, treats carefully selected just for him, he finally accepted them. His nose approached cautiously at first, but soon he was tasting the morsels she provided eagerly while looking up at her with those sad eyes now shimmering with curiosity. When Friday dawned bright and clear, anticipation filled the air as she arrived early at the parking lot outside the shelter, the sun barely peeking over the horizon behind her. She wasn't leaving without Charlie. She could feel it deep down in her heart that they were meant to be together. As she waited patiently for the staff to arrive, excitement bubbled within her. This journey had transformed them both in ways words could not express. When the staff arrived that morning and saw her waiting there with determination written across her face, they knew something magical had unfolded between them. Without wasting time on paperwork or formalities, they opened Charlie's kennel door one last time, and together they stepped out into a new world filled with love and hope waiting just beyond those walls. Charlie's behavior painted a heartbreaking picture of despair. Each day in the shelter felt like a never-ending cycle of silence for him. He lay in his kennel unmoving, with his body curled tightly as if he were trying to shut out the world around him. The sounds of barking dogs and the laughter of volunteers seemed to fade into an echoing void that he could not penetrate. His eyes, once bright and inquisitive, now carried a dullness that reflected his inner turmoil. Though the shelter was alive with activity, Charlie was an island of stillness. While other dogs eagerly wagged their tails and jumped against the bars of their kennels for attention, he remained passive, almost invisible. He did not bark or whimper. Instead, he gazed off into the distance, appearing lost in thoughts no one could comprehend. Each time someone approached his kennel, he would turn away slightly, avoiding any eye contact as if it pained him to acknowledge another presence. The staff members grew increasingly concerned about him. They offered tasty treats that would normally make any dog perk up with excitement, delicious morsels of peanut butter biscuits and savory chicken bites. But Charlie showed no interest. When they placed the food near him, he simply ignored it, letting the offerings sit untouched on the cool floor of his kennel. It was as if he had given up on even the simplest pleasures of life. The volunteers tried various tactics to engage with him. They played soft music in hopes it would soothe him and spoke to him gently while offering kind words. They understood that Charlie was not aggressive. Rather, it was as though a heavy weight held him down. They believed that something had happened in his past to cause such profound emotional distress. Something that robbed him of joy and left him feeling trapped inside himself. As each hour passed at the shelter, frustration crept into the hearts of those who cared for Charlie. They noticed how his spirit seemed to dim further every day. His unresponsiveness affected them deeply. It was like watching a flickering light slowly fade away without anyone being able to rekindle its brightness. They would often find themselves sharing whispered conversations about what could have caused such a drastic change in him. Had he been abandoned? Was there abuse involved? The questions swirled around their minds but found no answers. Charlie's well-being suffered greatly from this emotional state. The lack of interaction took a toll on his physical health as well. He began to lose weight, and soon his ribs became more pronounced beneath his once fleshy coat. The volunteers noted that despite their constant care, the clean kennel, fresh water, and nutritious food, he refused to participate in any form of self-care or playtime activities offered by them. He simply lay there as if waiting for someone to save him from this unbearable existence. It was clear that Charlie needed more than just basic needs met. He required love and reassurance, a gentle touch and warm words to help break through the walls he had built around himself. However, what could be done when faced with such profound sadness? As they watched other dogs find homes one by one, hope for Charlie's future flickered dimly in their hearts. They worried that Friday's adoption deadline might mean uncertainty for Charlie, a possibility that tugged painfully at their hearts because they knew how special he truly was beneath all this sorrow. How could they convey this sense of worthiness to a potential adopter when all they saw was a dog who had seemingly given up? Yet deep down, they held on to hope that perhaps someone would notice beyond Charlie's withdrawn demeanor and see the gentle spirit within waiting to emerge again. And then came Monday, bringing with it an unexpected twist that would change everything for both Charlie and those who cared for him at the shelter. A small moment of connection that ignited a spark where there had once been only darkness. As the week progressed, the weight of impending uncertainty loomed heavily over Charlie and the shelter staff. Scheduled for adoption on Friday, this timeline created an air of tension that colored every interaction within the shelter. The volunteers had grown increasingly concerned. They knew that as each day passed, Charlie's situation became more precarious. They could only hope that someone would step forward to recognize the gentle soul beneath his withdrawn exterior before time ran out. On Monday, the staff had started to prepare for that fateful day, thinking about how they would manage if Charlie wasn't adopted. Would he continue to languish in solitude? Would his heart grow even heavier? These thoughts pulled at their hearts as they busied themselves with their daily tasks, feeding and caring for the other animals who were eager for attention and affection. Each time they walked by Charlie's kennel and saw him lying still and withdrawn, a knot formed in their stomachs. They were acutely aware of how little time remained. The dawning of Tuesday brought with it a flicker of hope as they reminded themselves that incredible transformations could happen in unexpected ways. They recalled stories from other volunteers about dogs who had been overlooked but then found their forever homes because of a chance encounter or a moment of connection. But with each passing hour, as they witnessed Charlie's disconnection from both people and food, those tales felt increasingly distant. By Wednesday morning, Tension rippling through the air was palpable. As the staff began their shifts, whispers circulated among them about Charlie's upcoming adoption deadline. It became a recurring topic in their conversations. They shared experiences regarding difficult placements and pondered what might happen if no one chose him. Each staff member wore a worried expression while exchanging glances toward his kennel, hoping that someone might notice him before it was too late. Yet there was something different about Wednesday. A subtle shift in the atmosphere as the woman who had come to adopt another dog began her daily visits with Charlie. Her determination painted a clearer picture against the backdrop of uncertainty surrounding him. She arrived with her usual calm demeanor, bringing along her book to read quietly near his kennel while maintaining an inviting presence without pressuring him. The staff noticed how she seemed dedicated to forging a bond with Charlie, her gentle spirit radiating warmth even amidst mounting concerns about his future. They admired her patience and wondered if perhaps she could be the one who would bring light back into his life. With Thursday looming closer, moments of connection between her and Charlie began to flourish into something more tangible. As he moved closer to her side of the kennel during these visits, hope blossomed anew among those who cared for him. The headlines in their minds shifted from despair to cautious optimism. Could this be the start of something beautiful? As Thursday drew to a close, anticipation filled the air like electricity during a storm. Everyone at the shelter held their breath in anticipation of what Friday might hold for Charlie. Could he really be adopted? And would he finally leave behind the darkness that seemed to envelop him? The question danced among them, creating both anxiety and excitement. On Friday morning, when dawn broke over the horizon with ribbons of gold and pink streaming through clouds, all eyes turned toward Charles's kennel, as if it held secrets waiting to unfold. Staff members arrived early at the shelter. Many of them had left home with heavy hearts, pondering whether or not this day would bring them joy or sorrow. But as soon as they opened their doors for another day filled with possibilities, what greeted them left them astounded. There in the parking lot stood the woman, the same compassionate figure who had visited daily, her presence radiating determination and love wrapped tightly around her heart for Charlie. She wasn't leaving without him. There was no doubt about it. Everything felt electric as excitement buzzed in every corner of that bustling shelter. The atmosphere charged with hopeful promise mixed alongside lingering apprehension over what might happen next. As she waited patiently for staff members to arrive inside, while gripping tightly onto her dreams of bringing Charlie home at last, the tension reached its peak. What lay ahead was uncertain yet bursting with potential. A new chapter waiting just beyond those kennel doors filled with warmth, love, and hope waiting patiently on both sides. On that pivotal Monday morning, the shelter was filled with the usual chorus of barks and meows. Among the lively chaos, a woman named Sarah stepped through the entrance, her heart brimming with hope. She had come to adopt a different dog, one she had seen online, but little did she know that her visit would lead to an unexpected connection with Charlie. Sarah moved gracefully through the aisles, offering warm smiles to volunteers and giving gentle pats to the friendly dogs who wagged their tails in delight. Her presence was calm and reassuring. She radiated kindness that seemed to envelop the room. As she made her way deeper into the shelter, her eyes were drawn to the colorful tags hanging on each kennel, each representing a different furry friend waiting for a loving home. However, as she approached Charlie's kennel, it was as though time stood still. The moment their eyes met felt significant, though Charlie remained mostly hidden behind layers of sorrow. He looked at her once, just a fleeting glance, but it was enough to catch Sarah's attention. Unlike the other dogs who barked enthusiastically or pressed their noses against the bars of their kennels, Charlie lay curled up in a corner, his body language all but screaming for solitude. Curiosity tugged at Sarah's heartstrings. She paused just outside his kennel and knelt down to his level, hoping to engage with him even in some small way. The sadness in his eyes resonated with her deeply, and without knowing why, she felt an overwhelming urge to connect with this quiet dog who seemed to carry the weight of the world on his shoulders. "Hey there, sweet boy," she murmured gently, her voice soft and full of compassion. But Charlie turned away slightly, as if trying to retreat further into his protective shell. It didn't deter Sarah. Instead, it deepened her desire to understand what he must have gone through. She looked over at one of the staff members nearby. "Is it okay if I sit with him for a while?" she asked, her eyes filled with sincerity. The staff member smiled softly, sensing the potential for something special to unfold. "Of course. You can stay with him until Friday if you like," they replied. The words hung in the air like a promise. A chance for both Sarah and Charlie to find comfort in each other's presence. Gently, Sarah settled herself on the floor outside his kennel, keeping a respectful distance while maintaining an inviting demeanor. She pulled out a book from her bag and began reading aloud softly, alternating between glancing at Charlie and back down at her pages. It wasn't about forcing an interaction. Rather, it was about creating an atmosphere where he could feel safe enough to respond on his terms. As minutes turned into hours, Sarah remained patient and unwavering in her commitment. The other dogs around them continued their playful antics, but for Sarah and Charlie, time seemed to slow down. The room buzzed with life around them while they existed in their own little bubble, a space where healing might begin. With each passing minute, Sarah sensed that something was shifting within Charlie. He still remained distant, his body curled tightly, but there was a flicker of awareness in his eyes whenever she read a particularly funny part or expressed emotions from the story. He would subtly turn his ears toward her voice, almost as if curious about this new rhythm that had entered his world. The staff watched from afar, noting how Charlie seemed to respond differently in Sarah's presence compared to when others approached him. They whispered among themselves, hopeful that this daily interaction could lead him out of his shell. By the end of that first visit, just as Sarah got ready to leave, she looked back at him one last time. There was something about his lingering gaze that tugged at her heart, almost as if he were silently acknowledging her presence. "I'll be back tomorrow," she promised gently before walking away. As she left the shelter that day, Sarah carried with her not just a sense of purpose but a growing bond with this quiet dog who had touched her heart in ways she couldn't yet articulate. Meanwhile, Charlie lay back down in his kennel, but this time there was a hint of something new flickering within him, a tiny spark of hope igniting against the backdrop of his enduring sorrow. In the midst of the bustling shelter, where dogs were filled with energy and excitement, there existed a moment so quiet yet profound that it felt like a secret shared only between two souls. As Sarah continued her gentle presence near Charlie's kennel, something shifted in the atmosphere. A fleeting connection that would mark the beginning of a transformative journey for both of them. It happened in an instant. As Sarah read aloud from her book, her voice soft and soothing, she sensed the weight of Charlie's sadness. He remained curled up in his corner, seemingly lost in his own world. But then, out of nowhere, as if drawn by an invisible thread, Charlie lifted his head slightly from the cool floor. In that brief moment, their eyes locked together, a connection born from unspoken understanding and shared vulnerability. His gaze was hesitant but curious. There was a flicker of recognition in those once dull eyes. For an instant, hope sparked between them. It was a fleeting look, just a heartbeat in time, but it ignited something deep within both Sarah and Charlie. For Sarah, it felt as though she had uncovered a hidden treasure buried beneath layers of sorrow. There was life behind those eyes that had seemed so lifeless just moments before. In that singular exchange, Sarah felt an overwhelming surge of compassion and determination to help him heal. She realized that perhaps he wasn't as completely lost as he appeared. Maybe there was still a part of him yearning for connection and love. The sincerity in her heart urged her to do everything she could to reach him. For Charlie, that brief moment of eye contact stirred something long forgotten, a longing for companionship and comfort. It was as if he had caught a glimpse of hope shining through the thick fog of despair that had enveloped him for so long. Though he instinctively turned away afterward, retreating slightly into his shell once more, the impact lingered in the air between them like a warm breeze breaking through winter's chill. The staff observed this exchange from a distance, their hearts fluttering with cautious optimism. They understood that such moments held power, capable of reshaping lives intertwined in profound ways. They whispered among themselves about how significant this glimmer of connection could be. Perhaps this was the spark they had all been hoping for, a chance to break through Charlie's walls and help him find his way back to joy. Sarah continued to visit throughout that day, her heart buoyed by the small victory they had shared. She spoke softly, sharing snippets of her day, even when Charlie retreated into silence again. Each time she glanced at his kennel, she carried with her the warmth of their brief eye contact, a reminder that he was still there beneath layers of hurt. As hours passed during her first visit, she pulled out treats from her bag, gently offering them toward him without expectation. She wanted him to know that he could take things at his own pace. Although he initially ignored the offerings, Sarah remained undeterred. She understood that trust could not be rushed. She would be there for him every step of the way. When it came time for her to leave, Sarah felt a bittersweet tug on her heartstrings. She glanced back at Charlie one last time before walking away, silently promising him she would return tomorrow. That connection they had shared, the brief spark of recognition, felt like a promise itself. It was an unspoken vow that they would continue to forge this bond together. In Charlie's kennel, after Sarah left for the day, a new feeling settled within him, a flicker of hope that hadn't been there before. He lay back down, but now with a different energy, a sense of possibility glimmering beneath his sadness. That fleeting look exchanged between them had reminded him that love and connection were not entirely lost. Perhaps there was still a chance for him to embrace life again. As the days unfolded ahead, filled with potential changes and healing journeys waiting to begin, both Charlie and Sarah held on to that brief moment, their first encounter, that sparked something extraordinary in both their hearts and set them on a path toward finding solace and companionship together amid overwhelming uncertainty. As Sarah knelt beside Charlie's kennel, absorbing the weight of his sadness, she felt an urgent desire to connect with him on a deeper level. The gentle glance they had shared sparked something within her, and she couldn't shake the feeling that this quiet dog needed her. But to truly help him, she knew she needed more time than just fleeting moments. Summoning her courage, Sarah turned to one of the staff members who was nearby, diligently cleaning kennels and tending to other animals in the bustling shelter. She took a deep breath, her heart racing just a little. "Excuse me," she said softly, catching the staff member's attention. "Is it okay if I sit with that dog?" She pointed gently toward Charlie's kennel, her voice filled with sincerity and hope. The staff member paused, looking over at Charlie with a mix of concern and understanding. They had witnessed how withdrawn he had been and recognized that this could be a pivotal moment for him. "You mean Charlie?" they asked, their expression softening at the mention of his name. "He hasn't been very responsive, but if you feel drawn to him, I think it's worth a try." Sarah nodded eagerly. "I just want to spend some time with him. I think he needs someone to show him that he can trust again." Her conviction shone through as she spoke. It was clear she felt a connection that stretched beyond words. The staff member smiled gently and replied, "You can stay with him until Friday if you like. We can always use extra hands who care." The words hung in the air like a promise, a chance for both Sarah and Charlie to find comfort in each other's presence. Feeling a rush of gratitude, Sarah thanked the staff member before settling back down outside Charlie's kennel. She brought out her book once more, ready to share stories in hopes of coaxing him out of his shell. Her heart brimmed with hope as she thought about how this simple request could change everything for both of them. As she read softly, she kept glancing at Charlie, hoping for any sign of movement from him. Just being near him felt significant. Each passing minute held the possibility of connection. The bustling sounds of the shelter faded into the background as she focused solely on him, her words floating softly through the air. In those moments spent together, Sarah remained patient and nurturing. She didn't rush things or press Charlie into interacting. Instead, she allowed him time to absorb her presence at his own pace. This approach was deliberate. She understood that healing would take time and trust. When other visitors came and went, they often paused to observe the unusual sight of Sarah reading quietly while Charlie remained curled up in his corner. Some smiled appreciatively at her dedication. Others looked puzzled at his unresponsive demeanor. But Sarah didn't care what anyone else thought. Her focus was solely on Charlie. With each day that followed, she returned faithfully to the shelter, always eager to build upon their initial connection in small ways. By sitting close without intruding on his space, Sarah created a safe haven where he could feel comfortable exploring the idea of companionship once more. As Wednesday approached, there was still an air of uncertainty around Charlie. He hadn't yet moved significantly closer to her or shown any desire to engage directly. However, Sarah remained steadfast in her belief that progress was happening beneath the surface, even if it wasn't immediately visible. In those precious moments spent together over the next few days, Sarah would talk softly about her life, sharing snippets about her interests and daily adventures while continuing to read aloud from her book. Each word felt like a piece of her heart reaching out toward him in kindness and understanding. By Thursday morning, something shifted within Charlie as he began to inch ever so slightly toward the front of his kennel when Sarah arrived. Though it wasn't much, it felt monumental to her, the first tangible sign that perhaps he was beginning to open up. In these transformative days leading up to Friday's adoption deadline, Sarah realized just how significant those shared moments had become for both her and Charlie. By asking for permission to spend time with him, she had opened a door not only for herself but also potentially for a new life filled with love and companionship for this gentle soul waiting patiently for healing. With each visit adding another layer of trust between them, Sarah felt more determined than ever, knowing that come Friday morning, she would not leave without Charlie by her side. They were already beginning their journey together in ways no one could have imagined. Sarah returned to the shelter each day that week, her commitment unwavering as she devoted herself to helping Charlie. With each arrival, she was greeted by the familiar chorus of barking dogs and the scent of freshly cleaned kennels. But her focus remained solely on the gentle soul waiting behind those bars. The moment she walked through the door, her heart raced with anticipation. She couldn't wait to see if there had been any change in him since her last visit. As she approached Charlie's kennel, she noticed him curled up in his usual corner, his eyes heavy with sorrow. But there was something about her presence that seemed to invoke a subtle shift in the air, a feeling that comfort could fill the space between them. On that first day, rather than attempting to reach out directly, Sarah positioned herself near his kennel and settled quietly on the floor. Bringing out her book once more, she began to read aloud softly, letting her voice wash over him like a gentle breeze. Her words floated through the air, floating effortlessly toward him while not pressing for any response. She spoke about fantastical adventures and whimsical characters, hoping that her calming tone would create a sense of safety within Charlie's world. Each time she glanced up from her book, she watched for even the slightest movement from him, an ear twitching or a gaze shifting. It was essential for her to allow him the freedom to approach her when and if he felt ready. Though he remained distant at first, Sarah did not lose hope. Each day became an opportunity to build their bond in subtle, meaningful ways. Tuesday came and then Wednesday. During this time, Sarah made it a point to continue sitting outside the kennel without forcing interaction. The staff and volunteers started noticing her dedication and commented on it quietly among themselves. They could see the tender connection slowly budding between Sarah and Charlie. As Wednesday morning dawned bright and clear, Sarah felt a renewed sense of purpose. She settled into her usual spot and began reading again. This time was different. She sensed that Charlie was beginning to absorb not only her words but also her presence. When she glanced over at him midway through a sentence, to her delight he had shifted slightly forward in his kennel. He still didn't want to fully engage yet, but at this moment he seemed curious, perhaps wondering who this warm-hearted woman was who kept returning every day. Thursdays arrived with a palpable air of excitement. Sarah woke up feeling optimistic. She arrived early at the shelter during this visit, hopeful that maybe today would be the day things changed even further. As she sat down close to Charlie's kennel, she brought with her some tasty dog treats, carefully selecting them as though they were pieces of her heart being offered as gifts. Without pressure or expectation, she gently extended a treat towards him, still being careful not to invade his personal space. "Charlie," she said softly, "I brought you something special." At first, he hesitated. The treat sat on the palm of her hand like a bridge extended between them. But then, just as hope took root again in Sarah's heart, Charlie cautiously leaned forward, his nose inching closer to her hand. It was a monumental step for him. This small act felt dizzyingly beautiful, both simple yet intricately significant. The pivotal moments leading up to Friday fueled Sarah's resolve even more. Each visit solidified their fragile connection. One day turned into another as she showed up consistently for Charlie like a quiet beacon of understanding amidst his stormy darkness. Vows formed silently in both their hearts, a promise that they would navigate their fears together. When Thursday evening slipped into night and she prepared to leave once again, she paused for a moment at his kennel door. "I'll see you tomorrow," she promised softly with absolute conviction. Her words carried weight, an affirmation of their journey together. Soon they would share more than just these tentative moments. They were beginning to lay the groundwork for something extraordinary. Friday loomed ahead like an exhilarating climax waiting to unfold. The culmination of all their shared experiences captured within fleeting glances and whispered hopes for healing amid uncertainty. As Sarah settled into another attempt at reaching Charlie during their final hours together before adoption day arrived, little did they know that bright smiles and tears of joy hung just around the corner. Not only for them, but for anyone else who believed in transformative love, connecting two souls who might finally embrace life anew. By Wednesday, a subtle transformation began to unfold in Charlie's behavior that filled Sarah with hope. She arrived at the shelter with her usual dedication, ready to read and spend more time with him. But this time there was a sense of anticipation in the air. As she settled down beside his kennel, she could feel that something was different. The early morning sun poured through the shelter, casting soft light across Charlie's kennel. He remained curled up in his corner at first, but as Sarah began reading aloud, the familiar rhythm of her voice seemed to draw him in. She shared stories about heroic adventurers and playful animals, her words weaving a tapestry of warmth around him. Each sentence floated like an invitation into a world far removed from the sadness he had known. At first, it was just a small movement. Charlie shifted slightly on his bed of straw, which had been his usual spot for too long. Sarah paused mid-sentence and looked over at him. To her delight, she saw him inching forward just a little bit closer to the front of his kennel. It wasn't much, but for someone who had been so withdrawn for so long, this tiny act felt monumental. She sensed that Charlie was beginning to absorb not only the stories she shared, but also the nurturing energy that surrounded them. With each turn of the page and every soft chuckle she let escape while reading funny passages, Charlie continued to lean just a tad bit closer. His heavy gaze began to lighten as he watched her from that distance. Curiosity sparked within those once dull eyes. "Look at you," Sarah said softly, her heart swelling with affection. "You're getting closer. Isn't this story exciting?" Her encouraging words dripped like honey into the air between them, a testament to their growing bond that was slowly emerging from beneath layers of sorrow. Even though Charlie didn't respond verbally or physically in any dramatic manner, no tail wagging or barking, his movements spoke volumes to Sarah about the progress being made. Each time she glanced over at him while reading, she noted how he would shift subtly in her direction. It felt as if he were testing the waters of trust after being submerged in fear for so long. As they continued their timeless dance of connection throughout Wednesday's visit, Sarah gave Charlie space while remaining quietly hopeful about their evolving relationship. She spent time sharing snippets from her life and talking gently about everyday things, her voice wrapping around him like a comforting hug amidst his uncertainties. The staff members passing by began to notice these small yet significant changes as well. They caught sight of how Charlie was finally moving out from behind his shell with Sarah's patience and understanding. Conversations among volunteers shifted toward excitement as they pointed out this newfound progress, each whispered commendation underscoring the growing significance of these moments. When it came time for Sarah to leave on that particular day, she couldn't shake off the feeling of triumph that coursed through her veins. As she stood up and gathered her belongings, she looked back at Charlie one last time. To her surprise, he had moved even closer than before. His body had shifted forward enough that she could see faint glimmers of curiosity peeking through his sorrowful demeanor. "I'll be back tomorrow," she promised softly with absolute certainty in her heart before walking away. This small moment, the way he had approached her space just slightly, felt monumental. It hinted at the possibility of healing that lay ahead for both of them. That night when Sarah returned home, thoughts swirled around in her mind about what tomorrow might hold for them both. Could he continue this path toward trust? She understood that progress would take time and patience, but held tightly onto hope as if it were a warm blanket against uncertainty. As Thursday approached with its promise of new beginnings and possibilities for deeper connections between them, both Sarah and Charlie prepared themselves for another chance to navigate fear together step by step toward belief in love once more. Solid ground steadily emerging beneath their feet despite everything else lurking in shadows behind them. The road ahead was still uncertain, but signs of progress illuminated their way forward. A journey where every inch matters. And now they held onto each other through all waves, crashing towards healing hearts waiting patiently for one another amid uncharted territories ahead. On Thursday, Sarah arrived at the shelter with an extra spring in her step, her heart filled with anticipation. She had been counting the days toward this moment, knowing they only had one more full day until Charlie's scheduled adoption. But today it felt different. It felt special. As she settled beside his kennel with a small pouch of treats in her pocket, hope fluttered within her chest. The early morning sun streamed through the windows of the shelter, casting a warm glow around Charlie's corner. He lay in his usual spot but had shifted closer to the front of his kennel since yesterday. Another encouraging sign that he was opening up. Sarah smiled as she began reading aloud from her book, welcoming him to join her in this world of stories filled with adventure and joy. As she read, she kept an eye on Charlie, tuning into his movements. Today was going to be different. She just could feel it. After finishing a particularly exciting chapter about a dog who saved the day through bravery and loyalty, Sarah decided it was time to try something new again. With gentle hands, she reached into her treat pouch and pulled out a soft morsel that had always seemed to thrive on pleasing pups' taste buds. "Charlie," she said softly, her voice dripping with warmth and encouragement, "I have something special for you." Holding the treat gently between her fingers, she extended her hand slowly towards him. At first, Charlie hesitated, his heavy gaze darting between Sarah's hand and his cozy corner. But as he took in her calm presence surrounded by kindness and patience, a willingness to wait for him, he finally made a decision that sent waves of exhilaration surging through Sarah. Charlie leaned forward slightly, emotion filled with both trepidation and curiosity, and cautiously approached her hand. Time seemed to stand still as Sarah held her breath in anticipation. This moment felt monumental, as if everything they had shared was culminating right here before them. In those few heartbeats charged with expectancy, he sniffed at the treat resting in Sarah's palm before taking that final courageous leap forward. He lightly nibbled at the morsel. It was a small action but symbolized so much more than just eating. Charlie was reaching out toward trust and connection. Suddenly it became clear that this breakthrough marked a pivotal moment in their journey together. A gentle wave of joy washed over Sarah as tears prickled the corners of her eyes. A mix of gratitude and triumph flooded through her heart. "You did it!" she exclaimed softly, allowing herself to smile wider than ever before. Encouraged by this first success, Sarah offered him another morsel while repeating words of affirmation. "Good boy! You're such a brave pup." Her voice surged with positivity as he responded by taking another treat eagerly from her hand, a rhythmic back and forth beginning to dance between them. Soon enough, Charlie continued leaning closer against the bars of his kennel each time she held out another piece of food. Each nibble marked further progress toward breaking down barriers he had built around himself for so long. The bond they were forging felt tangible now, the invisible thread connecting their hearts strengthening further with each small act of trust shared between them. As lunchtime approached for the shelter staff members nearby, the bustling atmosphere surrounding them felt almost like muffled music. It didn't overshadow that exquisite bubble of connection blossoming right at this moment. The other volunteers watched quietly from a distance with astonished smiles on their faces. Somehow witnessing this magic unfold brought renewed hope throughout every corner of the room. When the time came for Sarah to leave after another fulfilling visit spent nurturing their bond together, she stood up slowly, lingering near his kennel once more, looking deep into Charlie's earnest eyes sparkling with curiosity. "I'll see you tomorrow," she said earnestly, as if cementing promises made deep within their souls beyond words. This tiny yet monumental step meant everything. Every challenge heading into Adoption Day melted away into something beautifully radiant awaiting discovery, just ahead for both Sarah and Charlie alike. Tomorrow would hold even greater possibilities. The chance to embrace not only lifetimes filled with togetherness, but also endless journeys wrapped around love fueled by trust given freely. On Friday morning, the air was crisp and bright as Sarah arrived at the shelter, her heart pounding with excitement and determination. Today was the day she had been waiting for, the culmination of all her efforts to connect with Charlie, and she was ready to bring him home. The sun peeked through the clouds, casting a golden light that made everything feel more vibrant and hopeful. As she pulled into the parking lot, Sarah's eyes darted toward Charlie's kennel, anticipation bubbling within her. She could hardly contain herself as she hopped out of her car, practically sprinting toward the entrance like a child on Christmas morning. The thought of taking him to a loving home filled her with joy. It wasn't just about adopting a dog. It was about giving Charlie the life he deserved. Entering the shelter, Sarah greeted the staff members with an effusive smile. They could sense her excitement and mirrored it back to her, all too aware of how special this moment was for both her and Charlie. "I'm here for him," she said breathlessly, emotion welling up in her voice. The staff quickly checked the schedule to confirm his adoption and began preparing the necessary paperwork. As they organized themselves behind the counter, Sarah found herself glancing down the hallway toward Charlie's kennel, hardly able to resist the urge to rush over and see him right away. After what felt like an eternity, they handed her a clipboard and pointed her toward his kennel door. "Just a few more minutes," one staff member reassured her. "We want to make sure everything is in order before you take him." But Sarah's focus remained fixed on that kennel door. It felt like a portal to the new life that awaited them both beyond those bars. She took a deep breath, reminding herself of all their shared moments. Every visit filled with quiet stories and hopeful treats. Those memories painted a picture of how far they had both come. Finally, permission was granted. The door swung open, allowing Sarah to walk toward Charlie's kennel at last. Her heart raced as she approached him. She could barely contain her excitement mixed with a touch of nervousness. Today, they would leave together, stepping into a world brimming with love and companionship, waiting for them both. When she reached his kennel, there he was, Charlie still curled up in his familiar corner, but now exhibiting an undeniable sense of awareness as he recognized her presence so close by. His eyes settled on her with a combination of curiosity and familiarity that sent waves of warmth rushing through Sarah's heart. "Hi there," she whispered softly as she bent slightly at his eye level, wanting him to know that it was time for new beginnings. "Are you ready to come home?" Instinctively reaching through to gently rub his chin, she approached slowly, allowing him time to take in every word spoken from her heart. To Sarah's delight, Charlie appeared more receptive today than ever before. He shifted just slightly forward upon seeing her expression beaming with love, a glimmer of joy radiating within those once sad eyes now shining brighter than before. After spending those few precious moments together, long seconds that felt like an eternity, they moved forward toward completing their bond officially. As she turned back toward the staff members waiting nearby for confirmation regarding paper signing before proceeding further inside where new memories lay just ahead, the universe conspired around them, love filling every crack left in uncertainty. The final formalities wrapped up quickly. Paperwork signed, the weight of anticipation lifting as exhilaration coursed through both their hearts simultaneously. There was no turning back now. They were bound together by promises made during those quiet visits spent nurturing hope amidst shadows hanging overhead until finally breaking free. The moment arrived for them to step out into the open world outside, a world where possibilities were limitless. Adventure awaited hand in paw and no longer confined behind those shelter walls. As they walked side by side across grassy lawns leading away from familiar places, the sun shone brighter above them, a perfect promise lying ahead filled with laughter, yet undiscovered soon beckoning both Sarah and Charlie onward into this new chapter laden with joy awaiting exploration ahead. As the last of the paperwork was being prepared, Sarah's excitement reached a fever pitch. She could hardly contain her eagerness. This was the moment she had envisioned since that first day when Charlie had looked at her with the faintest hint of curiosity. Despite knowing they still had to finalize all sorts of details, something in her heart told her that time was of the essence. Just as Sarah felt an urge to take Charlie and run, one of the staff members approached her with a clipboard in hand. "I just need you to sign here," they said. But as they gestured toward the paper, Sarah realized her gaze was already drifting back toward Charlie, waiting eagerly in his kennel. As she took a deep breath to steady herself, her eye caught him shifting from his original position. He seemed more engaged now than ever before. His eyes sparkled with recognition and warmth. The same trust they'd been building upon through gentle moments gradually becoming something solid and real between them. Feeling utterly compelled by her love for Charlie, Sarah gently placed down the pen she had picked up for signing. In that split second, they both understood what mattered most. They were ready for their new beginning together. Without another word, she approached his kennel door once again. Her heart fueled entirely by affection as she spoke softly to him. "It's time to go home." She opened the door slowly and stepped inside without hesitation, kneeling down at his level with arms extended invitingly. Charlie stood cautiously at first but soon took another small step forward, a silent confirmation between their souls sparking to life. Impulsively leaning against her side, he nudged closer as if saying goodbye to everything that held him back. Ready at long last for adventure outside those walls. With joyful tears filling her eyes yet again at this moment, Sarah scooped him up into her arms tenderly. This was it, no more waiting. While others looked on smiling or gasping in amazement at how beautifully things unfolded so quickly, there suddenly didn't seem like enough time left. "Sarah!" One staff member exclaimed in surprise while scrambling toward them, urgently wanting clarification. "Wait! We haven't finished filling out the adoption papers." But Sarah couldn't bear the thought of returning to all that uncertainty. Nothing would stop this joyous union now, in defiance of protocols designed with good intentions yet burdened by hesitation. She started walking toward the exit directly outside where new horizons awaited, beyond those shelter walls enveloped by Chloe's light from above, illuminating their path ahead. The excited energy bubbling between them electrified every corner of this shared moment. It dripped through their fingertips like sunshine trickling down as she tucked his leash firmly onto his collar while whispering sweet reassurances beneath all chaos crowding around them. "Come on, Charlie. Let's go explore our new adventures together." As they stepped outside from under the spectrum shadows looming behind determined forever, not looking back even once, the world around opened itself wide, revealing vast landscapes yet unknown waiting just ahead. For perhaps both a long-lost wanderer and a gentle heart finding healing chords intertwined through shared resilience filled with love awaiting discovery anew. Their journey lay before them now, hand in paw walking side by side, onward into possibilities limitless where once there'd only been walls holding fear, and stepping straight towards creating treasured memories overflowing with happiness lucky enough finally embraced fully into each other's lives forevermore.